Taehyung stood by the large glass window of the living room, hands buried in the pockets of his coat, staring outside at the perfectly trimmed garden. Everything in this house was perfect on the surface. Taehyung. Her voice came like a warning bell. He already knew the tone, measured, polite, practiced. Yes, he said, finally turning. She sat elegantly on the couch, legs crossed, fingers wrapped around a porcelain cup of tea. Her makeup was flawless, her expression calm, almost motherly. If someone didn't know her, they might think she cared. But Taehyung knew better. "We need to talk," she said. His stepmother watched him for a moment, then placed her cup down carefully. "You know, your father's business isn't doing well." She leaned forward slightly. "There is a solution." Taeyang felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "What kind of solution?" he asked. "A marriage." The word landed between them like a verdict. Taeyang laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "You want me to marry someone to save the company?" "Not just someone," she corrected. "Someone very important." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "This marriage will benefit all of us." "No, you haven't even heard the details." "I don't need details to know I won't sell myself for money." Her smile returned sharp this time. "You will marry Jungkook." The name meant nothing to him at first. "Who?" he asked. "Taehyung Jungkook," she said, "the heir to one of the largest private empires in the country." Taeyang frowned. "Then why would he marry me?" "Because," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "he is not well." Taeyong stiffened. "Not well?" She sighed, mentally. "He has the mind of a child." Something twisted in Taehyung's chest. "Then why are you pushing him into marriage?" "Because his parents need stability, and because money is involved." Her eyes sharpened. "A lot of money." Taehyung felt sick. "So you want me to marry a mentally ill man so you can save your company?" "You live comfortably," she said. "You'll never have to worry again." "You marry Jungkook," Mira continued, folding her hands, "and our financial problems disappear." "Our?" Taehyung echoed bitterly. She leaned forward. "Don't pretend you don't benefit. Once you're married, the Kim Group receives full backing from the Jeon Empire." Taehyung's voice dropped. "You're selling me to a mentally unstable man." Mira's smile sharpened. "He's harmless, childish. Doctors say his mind never matured properly." "You can divorce him later," she added casually. That sentence felt like a knife. "For now, it's just a formality. Consider it a temporary inconvenience for a lifetime of wealth." Taehyung's teeth clenched. Taehyung turned away, his hands trembling. "You're disgusting." "Be careful," she warned. "Your father has already agreed." The words hit harder than a slap. Taehyung's breath hitched. "He didn't even ask me." She smiled. "He assumed you'd be obedient." Something inside Taehyung broke quietly. The wedding happened 3 weeks later. 3 weeks of arguments that led nowhere. 3 weeks of being told he was selfish, ungrateful, dramatic. 3 weeks of his father avoiding his eyes and his stepmother winning every conversation. Taeyong stopped fighting eventually, not because he accepted it, but because he was tired. The wedding was small, too small for two powerful families. Taehyung stood stiffly at the altar, dressed in black, expression carved from stone. Then Jungkook walked in. He held a small plush bunny in one hand, waving at nothing with the other. Taehyung's stomach twisted. Taehyung stood by the large glass window of the living room, hands buried in the pockets of his coat, staring outside at the perfectly trimmed garden. Everything in this house was perfect on the surface. Taehyung. Her voice came like a warning bell. He already knew the tone, measured, polite, practiced. Jungkook grinned. Okay. The ceremony passed like a blur. When it was time to kiss, Jungkook hugged him instead. Tight, warm, innocent. Taehyung froze. The Jeon mansion was massive, cold. Jungkook ran ahead, laughing as he climbed the stairs. This is our room, he announced proudly. Taehyung entered slowly. I'm so happy you're here. We can we can play games later if you like. He clapped his hands and bounced slightly on his heels. Taehyung froze. Games? He asked. Taehyung watched him, a knot tightening in his chest. This all was very new to him. Jungkook hummed, then looked up at him. Will you sleep here too? Taehyung hesitated. Yes. Jungkook smiled again. Good. I don't like being alone. Jungkook patted the bed beside him. Come sit. Taehyung slowly did. Jungkook leaned his head against Taehyung's shoulder without asking permission. His body was warm, real. My parents used to sit with me like this, Jungkook murmured before they went away. Taehyung's throat tightened. They went away. Jungkook nodded. Car accident. He paused, then added quietly, everyone leaves. Something in Taehyung shattered. He didn't pull away. Later that night, Jungkook fell asleep holding Taehyung's hand. Taehyung sat awake, watching him breathe. And for the first time, he felt something unexpected. Not hatred, not anger, but protectiveness. Taehyung woke first, his body stiff, his mind heavy. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he felt it. A hand. Small, warm fingers were curled tightly around his, as if afraid he might disappear if let go. Taehyung turned his head slowly. Jungkook slept beside him, face relaxed, lashes casting soft shadows on pale skin. There was something heartbreakingly peaceful about him. In sleep, no confusion, no fear, no childish smiles. Just a boy who looked too young to carry so much loneliness. Taehyung didn't move. He stayed still, afraid that even breathing too loudly might wake him. Everyone leaves. The words echoed painfully in his chest. Carefully, Taehyung shifted his free hand and adjusted the blanket over Jungkook's shoulders. Jungkook murmured softly in his sleep and tightened his grip. Jungkook woke an hour later. He sat up suddenly, eyes wide, panic flashing across his face. His gaze darted around the room before landing on Taehyung, who was standing near the window. He slid out of bed and padded toward Taehyung, still half asleep. Without hesitation, he hugged Taehyung's waist and pressed his cheek against his chest. Taehyung froze. Jungkook hummed softly. You smell nice. Heat crept up Taehyung's neck. Jungkook, you can't just. But Jungkook had already pulled back, looking up at him innocently. Sorry,
You don't like it? Taehyung exhaled slowly. It's fine. Just ask next time. Jungkook nodded earnestly. Okay, can I hug you? Taehyung hesitated, then nodded. Jungkook hugged him again, tighter this time. The morning sun poured through the tall windows of Jaehyun's house, painting the walls in warm gold. Taehyung followed silently behind Jungkook, who bounced from room to room with an energy that seemed impossible for a grown man. His small hands reached out to touch the furniture and tap the walls. Taehyung, look at this, Jungkook exclaimed, pointing at a collection of porcelain figurines on a shelf. Do you like them? They're my favorites. I arranged them myself yesterday. Taehyung raised an eyebrow. They're fine. Jungkook pouted slightly. Fine? Just fine? His voice had the exaggerated tone of a child trying to provoke a compliment. You're supposed to say, they're amazing. Taehyung smirked involuntarily, shaking his head. Ridiculous, he thought, and yet somehow fascinating. Jungkook, Taehyung said, trying to maintain a composed tone. How old are you exactly? Old enough, Jungkook replied cheerfully, standing and twirling. I'm 7 or 25, depending on the day. Taeyang froze. He didn't know whether to laugh or scowl. Jungkook's aunt and uncle, who raised Jungkook, appeared from the dining room. Both were formal, polite, and careful. They greeted him with smiles. Taeyang, said the uncle, voice smooth, make yourself comfortable. If you need anything, you can ask servants. The aunt nodded in agreement. Jungkook is very I hope you will enjoy your time here. Breakfast was an uncomfortable affair, not because of Jungkook, but because of the people watching. Taehyung noticed it immediately. The staff moved quietly, efficiently, but their eyes lingered too long. Jungkook sat beside Taehyung, swinging his feet slightly under the table. I don't like her, Jungkook whispered, pointing subtly at the aunt with his spoon. Taehyung leaned closer. Why? She gave me medicines, Jungkook murmured. I don't like them very bitter. They make my head hurt. Aunt glanced up briefly. Jungkook immediately straightened and deliberately spilling juice on the table. Oops, he giggled. I'm sorry. The aunt sighed and typed something. Taeyang stared. That was strange. Days passed like this. Jungkook was gentle, affectionate, curious about everything. He followed Taeyang everywhere, asked endless questions, laughed at simple things. He liked cartoons, soft blankets, sweet food. He cried when his favorite mug broke. Taeyang noticed bruises on his arms. Who did this? Taeyang asked quietly. Jungkook smiled. I fell. But his eyes flickered. And there was something about Jungkook's vulnerability that reminded Taehyung painfully of his own lost childhood. Taehyung found himself doing things he never imagined, cutting food into smaller pieces, reading bedtime stories, sitting beside Jungkook during storms because he was afraid of thunder. He sat on the edge of the bed that night watching Jungkook sleep. The boy no. The man was curled tightly around his plush bunny, fingers clenched like he was afraid it might disappear. His lashes were wet. Crying in his sleep, Taehyung's chest tightened painfully. Without thinking, he reached out. His hand hovered, then gently brushed Jungkook's hair back. Jungkook stirred. Hyung, he murmured sleepily. Taehyung froze. Go back to sleep. Jungkook frowned. You didn't leave. The words were soft, hopeful. Something ugly twisted inside Taeyang. I won't, he said quietly. Jungkook smiled in his sleep. I didn't choose this marriage, he thought. But I don't want to abandon him either. That realization hit him. A week later, Taeyang came down with a high fever. His head spun, his vision blurred, his body felt unbearably heavy. He collapsed onto the bed, shivering despite the warmth. Jungkook hovered beside him anxiously. Hyung, your face is very red. I'm fine, Taehyung muttered weakly. You're lying, Jungkook said softly. Taehyung blinked. Something about the tone calm, certain felt off. Jungkook pressed a hand to Taehyung's forehead, frowning. You need medicine. And water. Warm water. He moved quickly, efficiently, too efficiently. Taeyang watched through half-lidded eyes as Jungkook checked the medicine labels, adjusted the dosage, and supported him carefully so he could drink. Since when do you know all this? Taehyung murmured. Jungkook froze. For a fraction of a second, the childish fog disappeared from his eyes. Then panic. He laughed too loudly. I watch TV. Doctors on TV know everything. Taeyang frowned weakly. You sound different. Jungkook's hands trembled as he tucked the blanket around Taehyung. Sleep now. You talk too much when sick. Taehyung drifted off, confusion lingering. That night, Jungkook sat beside the bed long after Taehyung fell asleep. His smile faded. I slept, he whispered to himself. Taehyung began noticing more things. Jungkook reacted quickly in emergencies. And sometimes, when Jungkook thought no one was watching, his expression hardened, his posture straightened, his eyes sharpened, then footsteps would sound and he'd become soft again. Taehyung didn't know what to think. Sometimes he felt it odd and sometimes he thinks maybe I'm overthinking. That day Jungkook aunt called Taehyung in her room. She smiled and said to Taehyung, I know, handling Jungkook must be very difficult for you. He is still unstable. I don't know why his uncle agreed for this marriage. I feel very sorry for you sometime. Jungkook showed tantrums over small things. You must have dreams for your life too, and here you are wasting your time on him. If you want to end this marriage, I am with you. I will help you to get rid of him. Taehyung's blood ran cold. He had been seeing the poison hidden in sweetness since childhood. Taehyung stood abruptly. You will not speak about him like that. She laughed softly. You're getting attached. No, Taehyung snapped. I'm getting angry. She left unsatisfied. Taehyung came back to his room angrily. Taehyung sat on the bed, knees drawn to his chest, staring at the dark ceiling. His aunt's behavior reminded him of his childhood. Jungkook climbed onto the bed slowly, clutching his pillow, hair messy, eyes wide and uncertain, like a child afraid of the dark. Taehyung, he said softly, tugging the sleeve of his shirt. Thunder is loud. Taehyung turned and immediately softened. It won't hurt you, he said gently, pulling Jungkook closer. I'm here. Jungkook nodded and crawled under the blanket, sitting too close, shoulders brushing. Then Jungkook tilted his head. You're sad. Taehyung let out a small breath. He hadn't planned to talk, but something about the way Jungkook looked at him open, trusting, unguarded, made his chest ache. I used to be scared of nights too, Taehyung said quietly. Jungkook's eyes widened. Really? Taehyung nodded. After my mom died. Jungkook went still. She died. Taehyung continued, voice low. And 1 week later, my father brought another woman into the house. Jungkook frowned like a child, trying to understand something cruel. 1 week. Taehyung smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. She became my stepmother, just like that. The rain grew louder. She never liked me, Taehyung said. I was an inconvenience, a reminder. She treated me like I didn't belong in my own house. Jungkook's hands clenched the blanket. My father. Taehyung went on. He never asked how I was, never noticed when I stopped eating, never noticed when I stayed in my room all day. He laughed softly, bitter. I lived in a big house, but I was always alone. Jungkook scooted closer without a word. His voice cracked. He hated that it still hurt. Jungkook suddenly wrapped his arms around Taehyung's waist. Childish, but it was warm. I will stay, Jungkook said, nodding like it was a promise written in stone. I won't go away. You don't have to be alone now. I'm here, always. Taehyung's breath hitched. You don't even know what you're promising, he murmured. Jungkook smiled soft, childlike, sincere. I know enough. Something inside Taehyung finally cracked. He pulled Jungkook into a tight embrace. For the first time in years, the weight he carried loosened just a little. It's okay, Jungkook whispered. Sleep now. I'll stay right here. They lay down together, still holding each other, bodies fitting like they were always meant to. The mansion was unusually quiet next day. Jungkook's uncle and aunt went for late night business party. Taehyung walked through the hallway with soft steps, a banana milk in his hands. Jungkook liked it at night, liked holding it with both hands, like a child protecting something precious. He smiled faintly at the thought. That smile shattered when he heard Jungkook's voice. Not the soft, hesitant, childlike tone, but something cold, sharp, controlled. No, not yet. Taehyung stopped. His heart stuttered. Jungkook's study door was slightly open. Taehyung hadn't meant to eavesdrop. He never had. But his feet wouldn't move. They still think I don't know everything. Jungkook continued on the phone, voice low, precise. Let them. The board meeting is next week. After that, they're finished. Taehyung's fingers tightened around the glass. That wasn't Jungkook. That wasn't the man who clung to him at night, who asked if thunder was scary, who smiled innocently when Taeyang tied his shoelaces. Yes, Jungkook said. The act worked perfectly. Taehyung's breath caught. The act? Jungkook went on calmly. Yeah, legally stable. Married. That's all the will required. He was necessary. Everything is going fine. The glass slipped from Taehyung's hands. It shattered. Silence slammed into the hallway. The call ended abruptly. The door opened. Jungkook stepped out and froze. Their eyes met. For the first time since they'd met, Jungkook looked, caught. Taehyung's chest felt like it had been torn open. Act? Taehyung whispered. Jungkook's lips parted. Taehyung, was our marriage? Taehyung said slowly, his voice shaking. Just part of your game. Jungkook reached out. Taehyung stepped back. Don't, Taehyung said. His eyes burned. Don't touch me. The childlike innocence was gone from Jungkook's face. So was Taehyung's trust. Locked himself in the guest room. He slid down the door, hands trembling, breath uneven. Played. That was the word echoing in his head. Every memory twisted into something ugly. Jungkook clinging to him. Jungkook crying. Was it all fake? The door creaked. Taehyung. Jungkook's voice came softly. Please, let me explain. Explain? Taehyung laughed bitterly. What will you explain? Then Jungkook said quietly, I never meant to hurt you. That snapped something. Taehyung opened the door violently. You lied to me every single day. I had no choice, Jungkook said. You always have a choice, Taehyung shouted. You let me believe you needed protection. You let me love you like you were fragile. Jungkook flinched. I was fragile, he said hoarsely. Just not in the way you thought. Taehyung's voice cracked. So what was I to you? A shield? A requirement in a will? Taehyung shot back. Every day, every touch, every time you looked at me with those eyes, was a lie? Jungkook reached for him. Taehyung pulled away violently. Don't. The word shattered something in Jungkook's chest.
Taehyung stood by the large glass window of the living room, hands buried in the pockets of his coat, staring outside at the perfectly trimmed garden. Everything in this house was perfect on the surface. Taehyung. Her voice came like a warning bell. He already knew the tone, measured, polite, practiced.
You let me fall for you, Taehyung said quietly, voice breaking. And now I don't know who you really are. Jungkook's lower lip trembled. I am me. I am real. Taehyung shook his head, tears stinging his eyes. No, you're a lie. You've been pretending your whole life. And now I can't. He took a breath. My parents' death wasn't an accident. Taehyung froze. They were murdered. Jungkook continued quietly. My uncle and aunt planned it. For the company. For the property. Taehyung's heart pounded. They thought I was young. Easy to control. But my parents knew. They changed the will before they died. Jungkook's voice trembled for the first time. The empire transfers to me completely when I turn 25, only if I'm married and legally proven stable. Taehyung stared at him. When they realized the will, Jungkook said, they tried to kill me too. Taehyung's breath hitched. I survived because I acted weak, Jungkook whispered, and I leaned into it, into the lie. He looked at Taehyung with raw pain. I had to make them believe they controlled me. Silence. Then Taehyung asked quietly, and me? Jungkook swallowed hard. I saw you before our marriage. Taehyung's head snapped up. What? Jungkook swallowed. You were working part-time. A cafe. Late evening shift.
Taehyung stood by the large glass window of the living room, hands buried in the pockets of his coat, staring outside at the perfectly trimmed garden. Everything in this house was perfect on the surface. Taehyung. Her voice came like a warning bell. He already knew the tone, measured, polite, practiced.
I went back again. Jungkook admitted, not because of the plan, because of you. Taehyung whispered, you never told me. I wasn't brave enough, Jungkook replied. Then I learned about your stepmother, how she treated you, how similar our lives were. He looked up at Taeyang. That's why I chose you, he said honestly. Yes, the will mattered, but you mattered first. Look, Taeyang's hands trembled. Taeyang couldn't speak. The room felt too small for everything. He was feeling betrayal tangled with understanding, heart wrapped around something dangerously close to love. You planned it, Taeyang said slowly. You let me believe. I know. Jungkook interrupted, panic flashing across his face. Look, I know I was wrong. But please understand, after my parents died, everyone around me wanted something. My money, my company, my life. His voice cracked. You were the first person who didn't. Taeyang stood up abruptly, turning away. Jungkook froze. Tae, if you hate me, I don't, Taehyung said sharply. Love. He turned back, eyes shining. That's the problem. Jungkook's breath hitched. Tears slipped down Jungkook's cheeks. I was scared, he whispered, that if you knew the real me, you'd leave. Taehyung exhaled shakily. I was angry, he admitted, because I thought you made a fool out of me. Jungkook lowered his head. I never meant to, but now I see it. Taehyung continued. You were trapped, just like I was. I just wish you trusted me sooner. Their eyes met, him into a fierce embrace. I'm not leaving. Taehyung understood better than anyone what it meant to hide your pain, to survive in a world built to crush you. And yet the boy before him was stronger than anyone he'd ever known. I I want to help, Taehyung said finally, surprising himself. Whatever you're planning, I'll stand with you. Jungkook's lips curved into a small triumphant smile, but his eyes held something deeper, darker, a mind always 3 steps ahead. I need you to trust me completely. After the boardroom was colder than usual. At the head of the table sat men and women who controlled empires, people who smelled weakness like blood in water. Jungkook's uncle leaned back confidently, fingers stippled, a faint smile on his lips. This meeting, he said smoothly, is to discuss the future of the company under appropriate leadership. Everyone understood what he meant. Jungkook entered last. The room stilled. He wore a tailored black suit, shoulders squared, gaze clear and unflinching. Taehyung walked beside him, looked. The uncle blinked, the aunt stiffened. Jungkook took his seat calmly and folded his hands on the table. "I'll begin," he said. His voice steady, deep, intelligent, cut through the room like a blade. A murmur rippled around the table. "Jungkook," the uncle said sharply, forcing a laugh. "This isn't appropriate. You're not well enough to." "I am perfectly well," Jungkook replied without looking at him. "And I've been so for a long time." Jungkook looked at Taehyung just for a moment and something warm flickered in his eyes. "My parents' fee," Jungkook continued, states clearly, "upon turning 25, being legally married, proven stable, I gain full control of the empire. I meet all requirements." And as of this morning, he slid a document across the table. "I am the sole controlling shareholder." The chairman read it. The chairman cleared his throat. "Legally, he does." Jungkook's uncle went pale. "Kim Jong-kook is hereby recognized as chairman and CEO." The room erupted. "That can't be real," the aunt whispered. Jungkook turned to them then. "What was real?" he said coldly. "My parents did not die in an accident." Jungkook continued, eyes now locked on his uncle. "Our deaths were planned." "After my parents' deaths," Jungkook said, "my uncle and aunt took control of my life. They attempted to kill me." Gasps echoed. "Lies," the uncle shouted, standing up. "He's manipulating you. He's sick." Clapped. Taehyung stood instantly. "You don't get to call him that," he said sharply. La. Security entered. "Han Min-sok and Han Sora," Jungkook said calmly. "You are under investigation for fraud, attempted murder and conspiracy." The aunt collapsed into her chair. The uncle shouted, cursed, fought but was escorted out in handcuffs. Silence followed. Jungkook exhaled slowly. "I am no longer hiding," he said, "and I will lead this company with transparency, strength, and accountability like my father wanted." Applause began slowly, then grew. Taehyung got Jungkook standing tall, victorious and finally free. Light slipped gently through the curtains, warm and unhurried. The house was silent in a way that felt safe, not empty, not lonely, just calm. Jungkook stirred first. He blinked slowly, disoriented for a second, before reality settled in. La Taehyung lay beside him, one arm draped loosely over Jungkook's waist, face relaxed in sleep. His hair fell into his eyes, lips slightly parted. He looked younger like this, softer. Jungkook smiled. "You're staring," Taehyung murmured sleepily. Jungkook chuckled. "Wasn't." Taehyung's arm tightened instinctively, pulling him closer. "Liar." They stayed like that for a while, wrapped in warmth, listening to the quiet hum of the house. No alarms, no voices raised in anger. fear of footsteps in the hallway. Later, they cooked breakfast together. Jungkook burned the toast. Taehyung teased him for it. Jungkook retaliated by stealing Taehyung's coffee mug and taking the first sip. Domestic chaos. Gentle laughter. It felt unreal in the best way. They ate breakfast slowly, sharing bites, knees touching under the table. Outside the garden was green, untouched by past shadows. Looked Edward. Taehyung pulled Jungkook onto the couch, tucking a blanket around them both. Jungkook curled up easily, head on Taehyung's shoulder. Stay with me today? Taehyung asked quietly. Jungkook kissed his temple. Always. Taehyung closed his eyes, breathing evenly. Law. In their life there was no role to play, no act to maintain, no fear of being watched. Just love, just home. The end.